Have you ever made a choice that changed your life forever? One that cost you everything, but led to something far greater than you could ever imagine? Picture this. A young widow stands at the edge of an uncertain future. Her name is Ruth. Her husband is gone. Her home, gone. Her dreams, buried under the weight of grief. In front of her lies a crossroads. Return to Moab, the land she knows, where safety and familiarity still whisper. Or follow her mother-in-law, Naomi, into a foreign land, a place of strangers and uncertainty. Most people would have chosen comfort. But Ruth? She chose courage. Where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people. Your God, my God. Those words weren't just loyalty. They were a leap of faith, and that leap would echo through eternity, placing Ruth, a Moabite widow, in the very bloodline of Jesus Christ himself. Ruth's story isn't about kings or warriors. It's about ordinary people caught in extraordinary moments, grief, hunger, loss, and a faith so steady it reshaped history. In a world that often rewards selfishness, Ruth's quiet devotion reminds us of the beauty of sacrifice, the strength of love, and the power of God who works through every heartbreak and every small act of faith. It all began in the darkest of times, the era of the judges, a season when chaos ruled and hope seemed lost. Famine had swept to the land of Bethlehem, forcing Naomi and her husband, Elimelech, to leave everything behind and start anew in Moab. For a while, it seemed their choice had paid off. Their sons married Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. There was laughter again, perhaps even hope. But that hope didn't last. One by one, tragedy struck. Elimelech died. Then both sons followed. And suddenly Naomi, once a wife and mother, was left with nothing but sorrow and two grieving daughters-in-law. Can you imagine that moment? When the future you dreamed of turns to dust. Naomi stood in that desolate place, her heart raw with pain, her faith barely holding on. "The hand of the Lord is turned against me," she said. Yet even in her despair, Naomi decided to go home, back to Bethlehem, the land she once knew. She urged the young women to stay behind, to rebuild their lives. Orpah, with tears streaming down her face, kissed Naomi goodbye. It was a reasonable choice. Who could blame her for choosing stability over struggle? But Ruth didn't move. She looked into Naomi's weary eyes and spoke words that still stir hearts thousands of years later. "Don't ask me to leave you. Where you go, I'll go. Where you live, I'll live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." That was more than loyalty. It was faith, bold, reckless faith. Ruth turned her back on everything she knew for the sake of love and conviction. When they returned to Bethlehem, the town was buzzing with whispers. "Is this Naomi?" the women asked, astonished by how much she'd changed. "Don't call me Naomi," she replied bitterly. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter." Yet, even as Naomi felt abandoned, God's unseen hand was already at work. The barley harvest was beginning, and hope, though fragile, was stirring once more. Early one morning, Ruth went out to the fields, hoping to gather leftover grain for them to eat. She was a foreigner, a widow, and poor, 3 strikes against her in that society. But with quiet determination, she stooped low among the stalks, collecting what others had left behind. To Ruth, this was survival. To God, it was destiny. Because that very field belonged to Boaz, a man of honor, integrity, and deep compassion. When he saw Ruth, he asked his workers, "Who is that young woman?" They told him her story, how she had stayed by Naomi's side, how she worked tirelessly from morning until now. Boaz approached her gently. "My daughter," he said, "don't go to another field. Stay here. I've told the men not to harm you. When you're thirsty, drink from the water jars the workers have filled." For a moment, Ruth must have been stunned. Why would a man of wealth show such kindness to a foreigner like her? But Boaz saw what others didn't. Her courage, her loyalty, her faith in a God she barely knew. Have you ever had someone show you kindness when you least expected it? A teacher who believed in you, a friend who stood by you, a stranger who changed your day with a single act of compassion? That's what Boaz did for Ruth. His kindness was more than generosity. It was grace in action. When Ruth returned home that evening, her arms were full, not just of barley, but a blessing. Naomi's eyes widened. "May the Lord bless the man who showed you kindness," she said. And for the first time in a long while, hope flickered in her heart. But this story doesn't end in the fields. It moves to the threshing floor, a place where faith and courage collide. One night, Naomi gave Ruth an unusual plan. "Wash, put on your best clothes, and go to the threshing floor," she said. "But don't let Boaz see you until he's finished eating and drinking." It was a risky move, bold, even scandalous by their culture's standards. But Ruth trusted Naomi's wisdom and God's guidance. When Boaz lay down to rest, Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lying there. It wasn't an act of seduction. It was a humble request for protection. When Boaz stirred awake and found her there, startled, he asked, "Who are you?" "I am Ruth," she said softly. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, for you are a redeemer." Her words carried deep meaning, a plea for redemption, not just for herself but for Naomi's family line. Boaz could have turned her away, but instead he blessed her. "My daughter," he said, "you have shown great kindness. Don't be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask." Still, there was one obstacle. Another man had the first right to redeem the family's land. Boaz promised to resolve it the next day, with integrity and honor. That night, Ruth returned home, her heart steady with hope. "Wait, my daughter," Naomi said. "The man will not rest until this matter is settled today." The next morning, Boaz went to the city gate, the place of legal business. Before the elders, he presented the case. Naomi's land was for sale and the closer relative was offered first. At first, the man agreed, but when Boaz mentioned Ruth, the widow he must also marry to preserve her husband's lineage, the man stepped back. He handed Boaz his sandal, the ancient sign of surrendering a right. In that moment, Boaz became the kinsman redeemer. He chose Ruth, not out of duty but out of love. And with that decision, a new chapter began. Ruth the Moabite, the outsider, became part of Israel's story, part of God's covenant family. Their marriage brought forth a son named Obed, who became the grandfather of King David, and from David's line would come the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Think about that for a second. A foreign widow, collecting scraps in a field, became the great-grandmother of the king of Israel, and part of the lineage of the Savior of the world. If that's not redemption, what is? Naomi, once bitter and broken, now held her grandson in her arms, her face radiant with joy. The women of Bethlehem rejoiced, saying, "Praise be to the Lord, who has not left you without a redeemer today." Maybe you've been where Naomi was, hurt, hopeless, wondering if God has forgotten you. Or maybe you've been like Ruth, standing at the edge of an uncertain future, unsure but still believing. Their story reminds us of one powerful truth. God never wastes a single tear. Even when everything looks shattered, He's still weaving your story into something beautiful, something eternal. Ruth's faith turned famine into harvest, grief into joy, emptiness into legacy. So what about you? What step of faith is God asking you to take? What risk, what act of love could change everything? The same God who redeemed Ruth is still writing stories of redemption today, including yours. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs hope. And remember, loyalty, love, and faithfulness never go unnoticed by heaven. Sometimes, all it takes is one step into the unknown for God to rewrite your destiny.